People still play this dead game? I see a lot of this, even with Warzone 3 out. Despite still having one of the largest communities of an FPS game, it's not an uncommon sentiment, and it's also an understandable one. But why? And what's been the impact of the new Call of Duty release? I'm well over 100 wins on the new game, World First Season 2 Nuke, and upload daily videos about this thing. From what I've seen, though, unless it's a funny or troll video, most of the content that really blows up on this game is problems, cheaters, and a lot of complaints. Maybe this is why you're here now watching this. Hi, how you doing? The game is so well known with previous players, there's relevance, and people want to know what's going on. I've seen a similar phenomenon over the years with Battlefield, Halo, but this isn't even exclusive just to shooters either. Before I tell you why so many people are still playing this game, and I'm even moving more of my gameplay from it to my second plays channel again rather than here, I want to set the stage of what got us here and why it's dead to so many. The history. We all know what made this game so great in the first place. Mainly Warzone I'm talking about. The timing of its launch. It being such a fun new take on Battle Royale, which was already such a popping genre at the time. The map was the biggest we had seen in Call of Duty and competed for size and detail with any of the other Battle Royales in combination with 150 players, bigger than the others. The gulag and buyback system allowing you to return to play after being eliminated. You still could play with your friends for longer and make mistakes, which, of course, as Call of Duty players, we suck. So having another shot and keeping our attention spans going, well, that's what we need with the buybacks. And even though it was a faster pacing and you could respawn, it really didn't sacrifice the build-up to that climax and those epic tales you could tell. Resurgence also came out and goes even crazier than that, respawning for free, but this mode completely changed the fun and pacing of Rebirth Island, which was already a map that was out and known, even in Blackout, their previous Battle Royale. That, in combination with the live service, the new playlists, weapons, Easter eggs, massive events they had, they brought their support for multiplayer to Battle Royales when people were hungry for it. And, of course, it was free, crossplay, letting everyone connect with anyone, getting more people online. But the reason timing was so important, no-brainer, the global pandemic. I think this would have been a success regardless, but that grew it exponentially larger. So many people had time to play. Celebrities, athletes, musicians, everybody's talking about it and online. It was as mainstream as ever. I felt cool for a little bit after being ridiculed for so long, making gaming videos and playing so much games. Content creation went way more mainstream with millions of new people even starting it. A different topic, but definitely ties in. And of course, we had our classic Verdansk. To keep something relevant, though, you need new content. And with so many new players, they needed a lot of it. Nowadays, we see an outcry, though, for Verdansk's return, that original legendary map. But most of the players back then were waiting for a new map and were eagerly anticipating Verdansk being nuked and completely destroyed. There were teases that a bomb was coming, but then we went back in time on Verdansk before that bomb could blow. And with Cold War's release, it was at least a nice refresh. It gave us a lot of new guns. It was mostly the same game, just with some more improvements and additions. But the snowball kept rolling until a full year later, people were now hungrier than ever for a new big map. That was when we got Caldera. This wasn't just a new map, though, and an extension of what we knew. No, this was a bigger innovation. They drastically changed the game's style, and while it may seem minor from the outside, some of the changes, and even look the same, how it played was very different. You couldn't get a loadout at the start of the game. All the vehicles had changed. With Vanguard Royale, they removed all the old guns, and there was now 2 different playlists splitting the community. Planes were added to the game that not only were very buggy when you got shot by them, everybody thought there was a hacker shooting you, but they were also completely overpowered, people dropping 60 kill games off of this, and for way too long. I had to even go back and check this, but it was true. They added red zones that would come down and just blow you up, damage you, just like the worst feature in PUBG. They decided to add to the game at that point. That with guaranteed free self-reses at Zone 3 from fire sales, weapon changes making snipers terrible, giving huge magazines, changing the way guns fired. It made for a big learning curve. And of course, first impressions are very important. And many people we're over it. Arguably, though, we got some of the best updates to the game in this era. Big game bounties, redeploy balloons. But a lot of the rest of the changes were them reverting the new stuff they added or revamping the map, dropping half the foliage on it. A lot of those changes, though, were reverted or fixed. But still, for many, it was too late. They were gone. Warzone 2 was the next big hope, but sentiment was also shifting. To their credit, innovating worked massively for them with Warzone in the first place, and many times in Call of Duty's history. The core of Call of Duty and these yearly releases is every time they have a new game to interest new and maybe returning players, a lot of times it neglects or even completely removes what a community loved. Even with Battle Royale coming out in the first place, zombies and multiplayer felt neglected, even though overall a lot of people loved it in this push forwards into Battle Royale. A few years later, though, often they bring these things back, and then that's part of the cycle. Even like jetpacks back in multiplayer with Advanced Warfare, double jump, wall running. Brought a lot of new players in from it, but they also lost a massive amount of them until they went back to boots on the ground. They are widening their audience at a cost of losing some of the older players, at least for a period of time, and of which they may have lost anyways just due to the repetition of the game. Games also don't necessarily have to be played in perpetuity. Just because you're not playing some of the classics that you might have loved, even single-player games back in the day, today, doesn't mean that they're bad. I think for many, though, often just preserving the memory is more important than ruining it with something new. And I think that's even been a big sentiment around Halo not getting a Battle Royale, although they've managed to kill that without it. So, Warzone 2. Not only did the same thing happen with Caldera occur again with Warzone 2, but it was even worse. I said from the beginning, they should have just called this entire thing something different, just like they did going from Blackout to Warzone, but they also copied so much directly from Warzone, and that was such a popular game. Why would you do that? Warzone 2 it is. They took 5 steps backwards to take 1 forwards. First off, we lost every single item we bought from the store with no compensation. I still believe they should have at least given us our store credit back for this new game that's the same game. We also had 150 weapons, a lot to choose from, tons of balancing and work that had been gone into it, all to be removed down to a third of the options that were mostly new, also worse and didn't feel as good. Gameplay-wise, everything slowed down, removing many skill mechanics. Sniping couldn't one-shot, period. Movement was slower, sliding was pointless, aiming was so visually recoil-heavy that high-powered optics were useless. It was like you're shooting with Bloom again. Everything just came down to luck if you were going to hit the shot. Everybody just used red dots and tried to shoot from far away. Looting even became menu-heavy, difficult to pick up and find items since it wasn't floating loot, blended in with the terrain. It also forced you to completely stand still, open up a bag, the menu. You spawned into the game with the 2 plate. You had to find an armor. And my favorite part of the change, carrying a third weapon, was removed, as well as third-person mode. They never fixed it. Or how about the ping system being removed in favor of everyone having the same exact colored ping that was almost impossible to see because it was white and blended in? Once again, over the next year, our new features were getting the things back that we had lost. Gulag 1v1, free loadouts in Zone 2, and loadouts that were squad-specific instead of just shared by everybody and being a perfect beacon to just go camp. Unlimited UAVs at the buy station and loadouts that you could buy, not just limit of 1 per, and each buy station having random items, so you'd have to go around to multiple ones. New feature of the blueprint system added back in, which we didn't even have for their new feature of weapons tuning. Remember trying to figure that out, as well as even figuring out how to unlock the guns. Now at this point, even more people didn't want to stick around and wait for all of these fixes. And this is just part of it. Feel free to add your comments of why you left if that is you. But even if you didn't play, you can see how many people gave up on the game. It wasn't designed for the same people anymore. Look no further than DMZ. This was the easy base game, fighting AI, completing missions, your extraction shooter with much lower stakes because of how easy it is to get guns and reset. It 100% did attract an entirely new crowd. But this was their big new push and focus, of which I completely played through, even competed and won 2 cash tournaments on. It was a massive amount of new content, but for older players not interested in that, that's just a big zero and wasted content. Warzone 2 Battle Royale over the next year, though, did have some forward progress that stayed with the game. Ranked gave the competitive scene a grind with rewards. Perk packages made a debut and improved the clarity, the flow of respawning. Strongholds and blackouts, after removing AI, created a moving hotspot to drop on the map. So it's not just Superstore 24/7. Proximity chat has been such a fun change and really carried the initial launch for most of us, I think, especially for content. Having bag space to carry loot after removing the different bag sizes and managing those. Nukes! Getting 5 wins in a row to unlock a secret contract to blow up the entire map gave such an incredible long stretch goal for fun attempts to stop as well. And of course, the reconnect feature, one of the most needed things in such a long session game style with such a huge climax. Of course, I haven't even mentioned cheaters yet. Similar to disconnects, with such a big buildup, getting your experience completely ruined by something that's outside of your control will often ruin your whole night, especially if you only have a couple games to play, and that was the one you're finally getting things going your way. It was looking like a win. Gone. COD did start Ricochet anti-cheat that has banned a lot of players, but also with less people even playing the game, there's going to be less cheaters and less of a market for the cheating companies to create those for. Either way, whatever the effect was, we did see improvements into Caldera and Warzone 2. It did also mean inaccurate bans and people mass reporting to even falsely ban people. That whole problem, though, is not something that's unique to Call of Duty. More so, I think it's a reason many people leave multiplayer games in the long run across the entirety of it, but definitely worth mentioning here too. Which leads us to Warzone 3. Technically, it's not called that, but for the sake of clarity here, we can use it. This was the release of the Urzikstan map with Modern Warfare 3. Now, at this point, we still have the diehards who played through Warzone 2, watching it revert back all of its changes, and a new wave of returning players finally able to play the game that they loved once again. Even a lot of the big names in the space are back. Dr. Disrespect, Tim the Tatman, Nick Merckx. Of course, there was more issues there because of Call of Duty's bad decisions, but that's another topic. Of course, that means, though, many of the new players they acquired in Warzone 2 are now pissed. They're on the way out. They got into DMZ, and then they're phased out in favor of the paid Zombies version, taking the bones of what DMZ was and tweaking it into a different mode. So no new content anymore. They must play the old game, the new Zombies with no PvP, or quit. The other players who liked that slow-paced battle royale, no sliding, more tactics-heavy, wanting an easier game, are disappointed that it's sped up again. Nonetheless, this felt really like the Warzone 2, an expansion of what we had originally had in Warzone 1, rather than something completely different again. Loadouts finally weren't taken away from us. In fact, with more loot, starting events, and static buy station locations again, it was even easier. There's built-in overkill perk, meant that you didn't have to hit loadout twice or buy another gun. They added new features that actually made sense, like having a pistol in the water, making swimming that they added in Warzone 2 feel even better. And we even got more back from Warzone 1, like scavenger contracts, having ammo in a separate bag space so you don't need to juggle it with your other loot. Sniping was also back with high-velocity one-taps. Blueprints are there from the start, and loadouts are simpler to make. 5 base attachments, even updates to the weapon balance, and the broken weapons in the game are happening at a much faster rate. The movement, the skill gap is present, although it's still easier than a lot of other games out there, especially with the ease of regain in Warzone and the relatively faster time to kills. There's equipment variety with more useful items like the heartbeat sensors back, portable radars, frags, different perks that you can actually use. That makes sense. And the live support for it has been solid. Season 1 and now Season 2 were well executed with a lot of great improvements. You have better warnings, now knowing when you're on UAV visually, precision airstrikes, more similarly indicated like clusters. They already added another new map and ranked. Warzone 3 overall has brought a new level of optimism, and I've seen more players come to the game than I have in a very long time. Although, still nothing like the past. The key is for them over all of this time, they just keep releasing so much content. And someone like me who makes daily content across multiple channels, it also lets me thrive with more to make videos on. Gives the regular players something more to do every single time they go on. Of course, even the new game hasn't been flawless though. Even with those updates, Season 1 Reload You may have seen how unplayable that was probably the worst update that they had ever dropped in the history of the game. Ranked, which came out, is only there for resurgence, again, turning away a lot of the audience that was there for the big map standard playlist Battle Royale ranked. But does interest new players, especially in their lead up to the return of Rebirth. There's still server lag, packet loss, dev errors, getting stuck in rocks, texture glitches with buildings appearing out of nowhere, grass disappearing completely, and rocks not showing up, hackers floating above the map as well as being below it, and still enemy audio not being prioritized over other sound effects. It requires a perk to hear well, and software many of the top PC players use to let them hear the important noises, giving them a massive advantage. They also reverted back to 100 players from their staple of 150, because they also decreased the time of the game to 20 minutes. And while they say now it wasn't because of performance, back in Warzone 2, they did decrease player count because of performance. And that's just now stuck around. So while less players does slow the game down, shorter times of the games and denser loot does help to at least balance it back out. And yeah, they still have the old guns, but none of them are even viable since they're so much worse than all the new ones. So why are people still playing? Yes, there has been a massive fall off since the pandemic times for players. People are back outside with their real lives. That timing phenomenon is over. Just like the timing for many of us back in school playing our favorite Call of Duty multiplayer game. COD 4, maybe it was the Modern Warfares, Black Ops, doing some zombies Easter eggs. But also for a lot of us, gaming is still life. I've wanted to play games just as much before, during, and now after the pandemic. I need something to play. And FPS-wise, especially this style, is one of my favorites. Battlefield stole me away in the past for a long time, but now they're not even competing anymore. They ditched their Battle Royale. And while I play a lot of other games, none drop as much content at a fast pace for this type of game that I want to play. COD, while it may not be perfect, is still giving us tons to do. It also is already so popular, being good at it gives you more cred than a lot of other smaller games when it comes especially to the masses. But it is an infinite cycle for Call of Duty that hopefully you see a little bit more clearly now. Abandoning part of, or maybe just taking a break from some of the communities, that leads to fall off. More recently, we just saw it with Season 2. Zombies really didn't get any new real content, while the rest of the game got a lot of big news. Now people are worried if that's going to go down the same route of being phased out like DMZ, especially with talks of a new round-based zombies coming later this year. That does lead to these big hype return moments, though. Back to boots on the ground. In this case, we're going to be going back to Rebirth, arguably one of the most popular maps of Call of Duty's history, even across different communities. Verdansk, of course, while not officially confirmed, was seen in single-player refresh and has been mentioned by many leakers. At some point, I'm sure it's going to come back. It's already part of Warzone Mobile coming, and after they make all their mobile money, I'm sure it's going to be part of the cycle here too. But I am also somewhat worried from all of the layoffs after the acquisition by Microsoft. We could be in for another rough ride for the next Call of Duty drop, meaning we could get a lot less content for the communities they're already trying to sustain, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is another round of overhauling the system again. Which also brings me to my content. I went all in for Warzone 3's launch, daily videos here leading up to it and the launch of it, but I also want this channel to focus more on bigger content, fun, funny videos like my YOLO series. I actually just recorded some today, spectating tips, commentaries, and other FPS games. So I'm taking a lot of my daily gameplays, weapons testing, and longer live stream content to my plays and my moments channels. I'll still post a lot of the crazy stories like nukes, fast crews, some of the biggest collabs and events that they'll do here, but I really want to continue to up the quality for you guys rather than just the quantity. And if I've missed anything about this too, discuss in the comments, but please, keep it civil. You guys always are great with that. I've really wanted to make this video every couple of months for the last year or two, but so much kept changing. It finally felt like this was the right time though. So a like is always appreciated if you enjoy these conversations. And if there's anything else that deserves a video on you want to hear me talk about, let me know. Thanks so much for watching.